Hello and welcome everybody out in the world. This is Fritzy from my usually German channel, but there's been so much request for an English version of the boxcard tutorial that I am happy to oblige today. I'm dubbing my German video and try to cut out all the bonus day info I have on there because that's just not pertinent to y'all in the US. So yeah, that's that. But without much further ado, let's just get started. What we are making today is this super duper cute 3D box card. It's not a new notion, but I saw a couple and I did not necessarily like the ones that had all same size boxes. So I made up my own and y'all liked it. So I'll just go ahead. As you can see, there's a huge blank space on the back for you to write your Christmas message on it. Then it stands up in a square and has like two balconies. I call them balconies or boxes where you can decorate to your heart's content. I used a stem set from the new Christmas catalog. It kind of feels weird sitting here in the middle of July, the sun burning on my back and talking about Christmas stuff, but well, that's the way it is. To start with, you need a piece of paper, which in my case is 13 centimeters by 16, and two strips that are 2 by 5.5. I used oh my god, I have no idea what they're called in English. These two stem sets from the Christmas catalog that will be launching on August 4th. If you don't have a catalog yet, contact your rep and she'll gladly send you one. So I used two different sets of designer series papers. These are the 6-inch sizes, also from the Christmas catalog. And this one is out of the box set with the gifts. I just thought it fit really well. I already pre-stamped and pre-cut all my decorative elements, which in this case are the deer, the sleigh, the titles, which I gold embossed with the embossing powder and Versamark and a heat gun. Don't use a toaster, it just ruins the overall results. And I used old olive and mossy meadow for my trees and a scrap of Whisper White, as you can see, which will neatly be left when you use an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. Oh wait, 8.5 by 11, you would have to cut it differently in the States because our A4 is slightly longer, so I can get out what I need. But you'll figure it out. You can get it out of one 8.5 by 11. You need your paper trimmer to score and cut later on. But first you score on the long side, on the landscape side, at 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, and 8 inches, which I usually fold away my first 2 inches because I'm a lazy bum. And whatever's left is going to be your glue tab. Just miter that off. So with the box strips, this I'm going to call strip B, and you're going to score that one at 1.5. Let me check my measurements. 1.5, 3, 4.5, and 6. Just put that up to the ledge at the end of the trimmer. So this is going to be part C, and you score this strip at 2, 3, 5, and 6. That's going to be 3, 5, and 6. So this box is going to measure 1 by 2. The other one's going to be 1.5 all around. That's it with the trimmer for now. And then we're going to score and fold, or fold and score all our strips and parts. Miter those tabs. And get rid of the waste. Make sure at this point that everything is at the right angle, because if you're sloppy here, you have like a totally wonky card. The boxes are closed differently than you would close any other box because you keep the tabs outside of the box, not inside, because we will be looking into that box and you don't want to have the glue tabs visible. So you want to keep your glue tabs to the outside of your smaller boxes. Procedure is the same as with any other box, which has like an even amount of sides. You just fold it down flat, glue the tab to the opposite part of the box, wait till it's dry, and then just pop up the box. The thing with this technique is you make sure that all sides have, or the two opposite sides have the same length and your box is actually square and not wonky. Free score with the bone folder. You want to make sure at this point that you have good movability, because making it easily movable later is going to be a pain, because once you have all the decorative elements on it, it's going to be a pain. So now you can already see how the boxes are going to look on your card, and we'll glue the base card together. And in this case, the tab goes on the inside again because, you know, you can see the outside, so you don't want to see the tab. There's a ton of people who would say, why didn't she put the decorative panels on the card when it was like open and flat? I would usually totally advocate for that, but this was honestly one of the first cards I made, and I'm usually too lazy to go in and pre-fold everything and mark where goes a panel and not. And as it's a full flat card, it's gonna be pretty well to just, you know, like put on the decorative panels while the card is folded flat. With the glue flap on the main card, you want to make sure it's not in the prime real estate where you're looking at. So you don't want it to be like in the back fold, which would usually be the way to go, but not with this card. You want the back fold to be not the glue tab. So I put it in the right corner because I'm not going to look at that. So I mark my front left and my front right panel in an area where I know the box will cover it later, and start adhering the boxes. Check first that they are not too wide, because this would be the moment you want to cut them down if they're too wide and blocking each other. But I'm good. You definitely want to use wet glue with this project because you want a small amount of wiggle time to position everything, just to make sure everything is in the right order. And I'm putting the glue on the panel that has the glue tab on the outside, so this is going to be hidden by where I adhered to my base card. Make sure not to cover the crease, and make sure to absolutely correctly align it with the baseline of the main card, because if you don't, your card is going to be wonky and will not sit flat on any given surface. Stick down the second one, again making sure it's flush. I'm sorry about the fly flying around my craft room. It's gotten to a point where it's really upsetting right now. And I'm not really living rural, so there's no farms around or anything. It's just so our card basically is done. and we get to decorate it now. But this is basically what the card is, and as you can see, it does fit into a slimline envelope or basically any other A2 if you fold it up. You might want to clip it down to decorate so it stays flat. I am just checking that I have enough panels of my DSP to decorate all my visible areas, and then I start gluing down said panels. Make sure you're not covering the creases and folds because those are actually the hinges you need for your card to fold flat and move. So getting too close to those creases is going to hinder your card in folding flat or popping up. I did cut my panels like a 1/16 shorter and narrower than my base pieces are. So that's why you see the white creases, and you definitely want to have those. Stick in the deck panels. As I said, people who might have problems fiddling around on the inside of the boxes can totally decorate those panels at an earlier stage where the whole thing is still open and flat. But it's not really tricky because the boxes fold up to be like a tunnel, and it should work pretty well. I'm just going to speed this up a bit to not bore you to death. And actually, I realized I have 2 panels missing, which I will be cutting from a different paper in a moment and get back with you to adhere those. The inside, I just decorate the 2 back panels because those are going to be the ones visible from the direct on-site into the card. I don't think anybody's ever going to look on the back of the front pages, so I'm not decorating those. And this is why you want wet glue, because putting the panels into the inside, you definitely want to have some wiggle time to adjust them. And this is basically the card. Once I adhere the front decorative panels, which I still need to cut. Which I did, and now I just adhere them to get ready for stamping. I am now using the smallest tree from the one set and Mossy Meadow to stamp a darker tree image to the middle of each front panel because I wanted to kind of be in the background as a shadowy tree in my little woods. I center those pretty much by the seat of my pants and on the baseline of the box. Before now, I take my scrap piece of Whisper White and stamp a couple of those trees to be die cut out. I do some mossy meadows and I do some old olives, whatever is your fancy. Then I go and cut all those trees out, and we'll be back with that in a second. Okay, now I have everything cut out, which is my 2 deer, my sleigh that I heat embossed, as well as my 2 greetings. The North Pole seal one, I matted on gold and red. The little greeting, the text greeting, I just matted in red, as you can see. And then I have like all my trees. 3 dark ones, 3 lighter ones, and that's about all we need. The deer are mounted on their springy boxes already, and I'll show you how to do those in a moment. And they fold flat, as you can see, so they're gonna pop up too. And I have 2 different width of boxes because I want different depth to my elements. So one is a 1/4 inch and one is 1/2 inch deep, so they can actually sit in front of each other, because you would never, I mean, they're actually in front of a sleigh, they're like next to each other. Plus, for the front one, I actually scored and folded the front feet a bit, because, or the front hooves, because the stamp is perspectively correct, with the hind legs being shorter than the front legs visually. And I'm a nerd about that. I don't want it to actually hover, so I had to bend his little feet. Only with the front one, because the back one's, you know, like in the back anyways, and he's gonna be sitting a bit higher. When adhering, make sure your deer doesn't block the other box popping up, or the sleigh that's going to be sitting on the right box. So just make sure his butt isn't in the way, or his little tail gets kind of like squished. And then just put on some glue and adhere it to the box in a position where you want your deer and where it's appropriate, and make sure that the box at the point where it sits, or that the deer at the point where the box card sits on an even surface, is in the correct height for it to actually stand on the floor, if you will. Once again, liquid glue is your absolute go-to for this project. Just make sure you don't use too much, because Tombow is great, but it stays sticky once dry. So everything that's squishing out is going to be difficult. Now I position my second deer behind the first, so there's a decent overlap. Put in your finger as a back pressure point, and that's about it. Check that they fold flat correctly. Press on again. And check. So now we move on to our territories, and I'm going to show you how to do the mechanical part. Okay, the text is just explaining, because I'm doing this in inches, that they could use centimeters as measurements too. I have like this piece of paper that I score at a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, and then I check what height I can use for my trees, which is 1 inch. So the next score is going to be 1.5 inches. See, I check how tall my tree is. So I have a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, and 1.5 inches scored. The next score goes at 1 3/4, and then I cut at 2, leaving me with a wide strip of scored cardstock where I can now cut down the strips for the trees. And at the smallest part of my tree where I need a strip, it's about a 1/2 inch wide, so I cut down at 3/8, so I make sure the mechanical strip doesn't show with my tree. And I cut 3 of those strips because I have 3 trees going in the back. This is going to be the mechanics for the trees sitting a 1/4 inch out. The next strip I'm scoring is going to be for the trees sitting 1/2 inch out. So I score that one at a 1/4 inch. That's going to be the tab that's glued to the back. A 1/2 inch, which is the part that defines the distance from the back. Then 1 inch to glue in the back of the tree, which gets me to 1 3/4. Then another 1/2 inch to go on the bottom of my mechanics, defining the distance, and a 1/4 inch, after which I cut, to go on the back again. which you will see I will be cutting off in a moment. And I cut them down to 3/4 again. Why I'll be cutting off one of the tabs will be obvious in a second when I start gluing. Okay, so now fold the mechanical strips, as I call them, and check or glue them to your trees. I start by gluing the trees to the strips, and you glue the trees to the wide middle part or to the long middle part, and only there. Make sure to cover that middle part well, but not too well in glue, and make sure to go all the way to the score line, but not beyond. This is where you really need to work precisely, because getting glue, especially Tombow, anywhere you don't want it at this point is going to mess up your whole mechanics. Position the strip to the bottom of the tree, the very bottom of the tree, with the score line that marks the end of your positioning area, however you want to call it. I'm kind of losing my language here, because if it's not sitting flush, the tree's either gonna have a stump or it's gonna be floating, and you don't really want that. So make sure your bottom score line is flush with the bottom of the tree, and when gluing down the mechanical strip, make sure it's kind of in line with the middle of the tree so the tree doesn't get wonky, unless you want it wonky. Now I am checking out how to glue on my trees, and I want the ones that are on the 1/4" mechanics to go in the back. That's why I use the dark ones for that, because the shadows are deeper in the back. And at this point, I realized I didn't really need the last glue tab on the bottom of my trees, because they were sitting on the box anyway. Had they been floating like the deer without a bottom to glue to, I would have needed that. But with them actually being glued to the bottom of the balcony box, or to the top of the balcony box with the bottom of the tab, I didn't need the tab that was going to be glued to the back. And as it's always a visual, I try to avoid glue tabs like hell and just cut that one off. You will need the top one though. So now I'm lining up my bottom tab with my box and the crease where the box is attached to the back card. Check for precision. Put down my upper flap and put glue on the very last piece, which is the glue tab. Really only on that smallest last piece to the first crease line. And then I fold everything down, fold flat, and press to the back. Hold it for a second for it to really get attached, because if it doesn't, it's just going to rip off the paper surface. Et voila, total, there you go. First scene tree on the box card. You can see the mechanics are working just fine. You can fold flap, and once you pull down, your little tree is sitting 1/4 inch in or out. Same procedure with the darker tree. I'm cutting off the last flap on the bottom, sticking that down according to where I want it. Take care once again to not reach out over the edge of the card too much. I line it up with the base fold, as you can see. Fold down my latch and put glue to the tab. Fold up and press down. And my woods are gonna be done, at least on this side of the card. And there you can see how those trees are in kind of a step stool fashion. And that's the woods. I start attaching the seal on the top because that's an area where it can get to easily, and I want it to sit like on the angle on the crease of the paper, which is like not an area that you can adhere a lot of glue to. So I made another mechanical piece, or two pieces, which actually are two little flowers cut out with my punch and folded in half, that get to be like grab pieces to adhere my seal to the box card. So put glue to one part of the folded flower, and then I mark the center, the vertical center of my seal, so I know where to put the little flowers, and I adhere the fold to the middle. With both flowers. And as you can see, those two flowers make like a butterfly, which now I can adhere to my box center crease, which will have my seal floating on that fold line. I found it's easiest to attach one side first and then the other, but I guess that's just a learning process. And it's easiest to actually adhere when you fold the box flat the wrong way. Actually, it would have been a lot easier to attach the flowers to the box card first and then adhere the seal to the front, but with me doing this the first time, I thought I wanted to make sure the positioning was right. So as you can see, the seal now is like floating in the air on the ridge of the card. Same thing with the greeting on the bottom, which will not have a visual mechanics. And I went in and just punched two little circles from a scrap of DSP. Same DSP as I lined the box with, so that's going to be pretty much invisible. I didn't find a green one though, but I had my little trees left, so I cut one out from there. Usually if I have a lot of those circles to make, I fold them and then punch them out, but with those two I needed, it just, like went along. And I thought stamp was better than white, so I just went with that. As you can see, now I will be adhering the mechanical pieces to the card first, because it's going to be inside the boxes and that's kind of awkward. So just stick down that first circle along the fold line and do the same on the other side. Same height though. Make sure you're correct there. So once that's dry, you're actually just going to open the wings of those two circles and adhere your greeting centered. Again, liquid glue is your friend in this project as long as you don't squish it anywhere it doesn't belong. Check that your greeting is level and check movability of the box. And that's about it. Well, I totally forgot my sleigh, which I am adhering with dimensionals. So this is my card for you. I hope you enjoyed the video tutorial, even though it was kind of scrambled, and I promise it's going to be better next time. Have fun recreating the card, and don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions.